read in Politico that Ontario Premier Doug Ford threatened to shut off his province's electricity exports to the United States.
But Canada has been a very nasty negotiator against the United States, took advantage of the United States for a long time.
The Canadian government has rightly retaliated and is rightly retaliating with our own tariffs that will have maximum impact in the United States and minimum impact here in Canada.
We saw the shameful actions by Donald Trump to negotiate with Vladimir Putin, another gangster.
For weeks now, we've been faced with so much uncertainty coming from President Trump. Each day brings new tariff threats. That's why today we're moving forward with a 25% surcharge on electricity exports for the 1.5 million American homes and businesses that Ontario powers, homes and businesses in Minnesota, Michigan, and New York.
They didn't start this fight, but they'll finish it. Canada, a nation built on cooperation, diplomacy, and good faith, finds itself cornered in a bitter trade war it never asked for. And at the heart of this rising storm is the reckless hand of one man, President Donald Trump. It started with tariffs, first on steel and aluminum, then on dairy, then lumber. Piece by piece, the Trump administration has been dismantling decades of economic partnership with Canada, treating a neighbor and ally like an adversary. The result? Uncertainty, disruption, and now retaliation. Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, has had enough. Standing tall before his people, he made a declaration that reverberated across both borders. Ontario, one of the largest exporters of electricity to the United States, is now prepared to fight back. Ford went further in his statement. He didn't just say the US would pay. He said it needed to. They need to feel the pain, he said. Not as revenge, but to understand that Canada will no longer tolerate being treated like an afterthought. His words weren't just political, they were personal. On March 10, 2025, in a bold and unprecedented move, Canada imposed a 25% tariff on U.S. goods worth over $155 billion, striking back at a trade assault it never invited. Ontario, the engine of Canadian industry and energy, went further. It placed a 25% surcharge on electricity exports to the United States, targeting New York, Michigan, and Minnesota. And Premier Doug Ford, in no uncertain terms, made it clear, if the US escalates, Canada will go further. The electricity could be shut off entirely, power lines cut, energy gone, lights out. That's not all. Border travel restrictions are being reviewed. Cross-border projects are stalling, the mood is hardening. What began as measured restraint has now become a defensive wall. Not because Canada wants a trade war, but because Canada can no longer afford to be polite while being economically punched in the face. These actions are not retaliation for retaliation's sake. They are responses born of necessity, and they have a clear trigger: the reckless trade aggression of President Donald Trump. Let that sink in. The lights that power millions of American homes and businesses could go dark. Hospitals, schools, factories, all because one man decided to gamble with international relationships and the livelihoods of millions. We're going to land every piece we've got, Ford said. And this isn't just political rhetoric. This is a nation pushed to the edge. And now, it's Canada's turn to respond with purpose and pride. American tariffs on Canadian goods went into effect on March 4, 2025, a 25% levy on steel, aluminum, and more. Less than a week later, Canada responded in kind with its own 25% tariffs, covering $155 billion worth of US exports. Electricity included. That electricity flows across our shared border daily, more than 27 million megawatt-hours in 2024 alone. That's not just a number. That's heat in the dead of winter. That's air conditioning during summer blackouts. That's the hum of life in the northeast US, powered by the rivers and grids of Canadian provinces like Ontario and Quebec. Now, President Trump threatens to double down, a 50% tariff on aluminum and steel. And perhaps worse, he's considering declaring a national emergency in response to energy shortfalls he himself is helping to create. This isn't economic policy. This is economic warfare. And Canadians are paying the price. Factories shuttered, jobs lost, families are wondering how they'll afford groceries or rent. And all the while, Trump stands at the podium telling US companies to eat the cost. Easy for him to say. He's not the one facing empty order books or rising inflation. Canada's economy has been hit hard. But Canadians, we're not backing down. Ford's 25% electricity tariff is projected to cost American consumers up to $277,000 per day. That's $100 per month for families. Small businesses will feel it even more, especially in New York, which imports up to 2,500 megawatts from Ontario alone. Quebec supplies another 2,100. Without that power, the northeastern US faces a dangerous gap, and it may not be able to fill it quickly. The nearest grid, PJM interconnection, is already stretched. It serves 13 states. Demand is high, supply is tight, prices are rising, and now Trump's trade war might tip the scales into chaos. But it's not just about numbers, it's about respect. Canada stood by the US through wars, recessions, and crises. We opened our markets, shared our resources, built one of the most integrated economic partnerships the world has ever seen. And this is how we're repaid? With insults, with tariffs, with threats to our industries and our way of life. Enough is enough. Trump's administration has painted Canada as a threat, an opportunist, and even a cheat. But it's not Canadians who started this. It's not Ontario's workers who decided to slap tariffs on dairy and lumber. It's not the people of Quebec who asked for a trade war. This began in Washington, fueled by political ambition, driven by misinformation, and now it's spiraling out of control. So what does this mean for Canadians? It means recognizing our strength. Our energy exports, electricity, oil, and natural gas are not just commodities, they're leverage, strategic assets. And if the US chooses to push us, they may find themselves in the dark. Literally, it also means solidarity. Ontario may be leading the charge, but the whole country stands behind it. From British Columbia to Newfoundland, Canadians are watching this unfold. They're angry, they're ready to act. Doug Ford isn't alone. Other premiers are exploring their own responses: counter-tariffs, trade diversification, accelerated foreign investment, especially from countries that respect partnerships, not punish them. Canada is not powerless. We are resource-rich, globally respected, and fiercely united. We have options, and if this trade war continues, we will use them. Because let's be clear, Canada is not Trump's punching bag. We are not a doormat for a volatile neighbor, and we will not be intimidated into submission. Premier Ford spoke for many when he said, "Believe me when I say I do not want to do this." No one in Canada wants a trade war, but if forced to choose between capitulation and standing tall, we will always choose the latter. Trump's 51-state mentality, his belief that America can bully its way through trade policy, has backfired. Instead of respect, he's sown resentment. Instead of partnership, he's created division. Now Canada is re-evaluating everything. Why send electricity south when it could power new industries at home? Why rely on a neighbor that treats us like an enemy? Why not build stronger ties with Europe, Asia, and nations that value mutual respect? These are questions being asked in Parliament, in boardrooms, and around dinner tables from Toronto to Vancouver. And the answers are coming into focus. This isn't about vengeance, it's about survival. If Trump wants a war, he'll get one. But he'll find that Canada fights not with bluster, but with precision, with strategy, with conviction. And when the US consumer begins to feel the weight of higher prices, rolling blackouts, and unreliable supply chains, they'll know exactly who to blame. This is not the Canadian people's fault. This is not our doing. But if we must protect our industries, our jobs, and our future, we will not hesitate. Doug Ford's message to Americans was simple. I feel terrible for the American people because it's not the American people who started this trade war. But make no mistake, if Americans do not hold their leaders accountable, if they allow tariffs and threats to rule the day, they too will feel the consequences. This is bigger than one province, bigger than one tariff. It's about respect between nations, about the rules that have governed decades of prosperity, and about the consequences of breaking those rules. The Trump administration thought it could isolate Canada, that we'd fold, that we'd come crawling back. They were wrong. Canadians don't rattle easily, but when pushed too far, we push back, with calm, with clarity, and with purpose. This is our moment, not to escalate needlessly, but to stand firm, to remind the world that partnership must go both ways, and to show that Canada will not be cornered. To our friends in the United States, we say, we want peace. We want prosperity. but not at the cost of our dignity. And to President Trump we say, you started this. And unless you change course, you'll be remembered not for making America great, but for breaking America's most trusted alliance.